now tuned in to Fist Physics. Today's topic, big fight weekend, May 20th, week before we get to see Errol Spence Jr. taking on Special K, Kell Brook out in the UK. This is going down May 20th. Showtime and HBO have both blessed us with some great fights this weekend. I'm looking forward to both, and we're going to take a look right now. So on HBO, we have Terrence Crawford taking on the Olympian Felix Diaz from DR, Dominican Republic. Now, a lot of people don't, casual fans might not know about Felix Diaz. He actually is a pretty good fighter. He's a southpaw. He can get in the pocket. He's very skillful. Doesn't have a lot of power. I actually believe Felix has maybe 8 or 9 knockouts on his record, maybe like 20-something wins. He did suffer a controversial loss a while back, but he's looking to step his game up and mix it up with Terrence Crawford on HBO this weekend. I'm saying that it should be an interesting fight for about 3 to 4 rounds. 3 to 4 rounds. I mean, one, in my opinion, Felix Diaz is not really physically built to be at 140. That's just in my humble opinion. His physical dimensions seem like he would have been better off at maybe a 130 or 135. But he is very skillful. He's no slouch. His build kind of reminds me of Gamboa. And not to reference the actual Gamboa fight, but the hardcore fans might have seen a couple of years back Gamboa sparring against Terrence Crawford, and Gamboa was actually getting the better of Crawford. When the fight actually happened between those guys, it was a few years later. To be honest with you, I don't think Gamboa's heart was really in the boxing game anymore, and I think he was just looking to get a nice payday and walk away. That's how it looked to me. Because the guy that I saw sparring Crawford was totally different than the professional I saw that got in the ring with Crawford. It's like 2 different guys. But Gamboa's speed and his explosiveness allowed him to get in on Crawford and work. Now, Gamboa, on paper, has a lot more power than Felix Diaz, but Gamboa also had a shaky chin. This kid Diaz seems a little bit more durable. Gamboa was also fighting at a force weight, but they seem to be maybe about the same height, same arm length. So I'm looking to see a very similar fight, especially as we cross the threshold from the first 4 into the middle rounds toward the late rounds. I'm actually picking Crawford to stop Diaz somewhere in the late in the fight, maybe between 8 and 12 somewhere. I don't really see Diaz being able to hold off Crawford. Now, I'm not saying that, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Felix Diaz. He's a great champion, Olympian, like I said earlier. Great skill set, which I've mentioned several times, as a southpaw. But, I mean, and I don't know how many fans have actually been keeping a close eye on the weight the day of. Now, some fighters actually request, I guess, well, it depends on what promotional company you're with, but some fighters actually request to have that information withheld. People like Floyd Mayweather. Last couple of fights out, we didn't know what he weighed. Canelo. Last couple of fights, we don't know what he weighed. And I'm talking about before the Chavez. Last 5 fights, maybe, the day of, even though the fighter might have been weighed, it wasn't released to the public. But that's not the case yet with Crawford. In Crawford's last 3 fights, he's walked in between 153 and 155. So I'm saying it's just too much weight. Diaz is in there with a much bigger man. He's in there with basically a junior middleweight who's very skillful, who switches back and forth from southpaw to orthodox. And I think it's just going to be too much. It's going to overwhelm Diaz, and I see Crawford getting him out there late. Now, I hope a lot of people tune into this fight, because I think Crawford actually is going to have a real fight. And you know what? And I'm not trying to say it, not trying to take away anything from Crawford's former opponents. But you got a guy, a Cuban standout, Cuban all-star. And if you're a hardcore fan, you know the Cuban school of boxing is very good. Very good. But there's a guy who just moved up to the weight class by the name of Francis Bartholomew, who is also undefeated, who is also a champion, a belt holder at 135, who just moved up to 140 pounds. And I think that he would give Crawford a great fight. I'm not picking Bartholomew to beat Crawford because Crawford at this point, like I just stated, in my opinion, is a junior middleweight, and it's going to be tough for a guy to come up from 130, 135, or even a natural 140 to beat a guy who's skilled and hits hard and is heavy. It's going to be very hard. But I think that this fight right here might set that up, might set that in motion, and I'm looking forward to it. Just another great fight. And unfortunately, HBO has not been giving us the most action-packed fights as of late. Chavez Jr. versus Canelo, probably the latest one in the bag. Now, moving on to Showtime. Showtime, I do believe Gary Russell Jr. is fighting on Showtime. Well, he's fighting on the undercard of one of these shows, and to be honest, I don't have my notes in front of me, so I'm really not 100% sure. But Gary Russell Jr. is fighting on one of these undercards. The main event over at Showtime is actually going to be Gervonta Tank Davis taking on this guy, Liam Walsh from the UK. I actually believe that Davis is going over to the UK, and a strap is on the line. It's Gervonta's, I think maybe his first fight or second fight after becoming a champion. So, I mean, I'm just looking to check that out and see what has developed in Tank, over the course of his career. You got to follow these guys when they're young and it's early, man, so you're able to pinpoint any flaws or anything like that, especially for my gamblers out there, people who like to gamble on the sport of boxing. You got to be following these fighters from the beginning, seeing what's going on with them, checking their development, and this will help you as they approach those big fights to possibly make some money. So I'm looking to check this fight out between Walsh and Davis. There also was a very action-packed press conference with Floyd Mayweather present. And Floyd Mayweather is grooming Gervonta Tank Davis, in my opinion. The way that a De La Hoya groomed Canelo, the way that Bob groomed Pacquiao. So this seems to be Floyd's first fighter that he's actually working with from such a young, tender age and helping him build up and giving him all the tips and all the tricks to the trade. I mean, so I'm looking forward to Tank's career, and hopefully he goes on to be a multi-division champion just like his boss. That'd be great. Tank Davis is a very interesting character. He has a mouth on him. Very good skill set, very skilled. I believe he comes out the same gym as Adrian Broner. He's originally from Baltimore. Great kid to watch. Lots of fun to see. So check these fights out this weekend, May 20th, folks, Saturday. HBO and Showtime. You might have to DVR one or flip back and forth, whatever you got to do. Check these fights out. All right, it's the Mighty Mean Joe Frazier. One.